KB. Check ele. KB.
Baba.
Chinese light in me. Those light. I want to speak. Okay, speak to the work. Yeah, okay. No, she's asking why she's not there. Quite unusual for her. That is number 2. Fisher. Number 2. Yeah, I know her very well. She's at the Institute of Child Studies. UI. She has worked. Oh, she's online. She worked on Paraga. She's already here. She's connected online. Yes. Okay, good. Can I should press this? So it's okay. That good. Okay. Good afternoon, colleagues. You are welcome to this session, and I'm so happy that we have all our panelists with us. This session is so important from the way the organizers saw it. Because whether you want to get a grant, you want to get a postdoctoral fellowship, you want to be successful with your doctoral work, if you are not granted in methodology, and the basics, you are going to fail. And why failure is not a problem in academics, because we learn from it. It's better to learn how to do it the right way. So this session will look at how to conduct research in Nigeria, reflections from the archives and fieldwork experience. And we have 4 discussants. I have, maybe I should start with the only, I'm gender sensitive too in this time. I'm going to be gender sensitive. We have the only male discussants among the 4. So I will start with Sheung Okwade, who is an economic historian. He has done basic good works from the archives and also collaborated with those on the field. Sheung Okwade, you are welcome. Then I will go to the panelists who are joining us from join us virtually. I have with me Jana Seres. Jana Seres is an anthropologist, popular culture researcher, and she presently works with in Denmark, University of Groningen. So, Jana, you are welcome to the panel.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Jana. Then I will go to a friend, and we are allowing her together. We are both trained by Professor Obilawi. She's an anthropologist, and also, well, one of our popular works I love is the work she did on Paraga, you know, as a medical anthropologist. Feishara Omobowale of the Institute of Child Studies, University of Ibadan. You are welcome, Professor Doyin.
Thank you. Thank you,
so
Professor Ade Mowa, my brother.
Yes, very well.
Thank you so much.
It's okay. So, and I go to Moralake Dairo, who is a media studies scholar, a fashion studies scholar, and also marketing communication scholar. She presently works with the Manchester Metropolitan University. Moralake, hello from this part of the world.
Thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Moralake. So, like I said, we want to share the experience. We know that to get anything wonderful from maybe grants and everything you want to get, or a research you can be proud of, you need to get the data. When people talk about the AI, I'm always laughing because sometimes when you are sending works to review, you see the AI work and you see the traditional works. The lacuna is always there, no matter what you think. And what separates them is probably what some of us will agree with today. Well, in addition to the 4 panelists, we also have so many panelists here who will contribute. I always want a session that is very robust. So you are going to share your experience also. But the major persons that will share with us are the 4 that will be introduced. So without much ado or wasting much of your time, I will start with Moralake Dairo. You have the floor. For how many minutes, please? 15 minutes will be fine because we want others to also ask you some questions and also, you know, so you have the floor, Moralake. Thank you.
All right, so 15 minutes, right?
Oh, yes, sure.
Okay. All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marala Kedar. They've already introduced me. I would be giving just like a brief overview of my research areas and, you know, some of the methodologies that I used, especially for my doctorate thesis. Just to give a brief background, my research area is mostly in the area of African fashion, place branding, and fashion marketing. So before I ventured into academia full-time last year, I used to work in marketing comms. So I've worked in oil and gas, FMCG. And so my research kind of also mirrors the experience that I've had like in industry, working in like the marketing space as well as fintech as well. So when I'm talking about research, I might also include some of the things that I learned from industry as well. My doctorate thesis was focused on branding cities, investigating the classification of Lagos as a fashion capital. So I looked at Lagos as a city from the perspective of different stakeholders, and I used the mixed method methodology for my thesis. And so I did a content analysis of like social media platforms. I did survey for Lagos residents just to find out what they thought about the city from a fashion perspective. And I also attempted to speak to the government, which is one of the things we'll talk about today. Because I mean, if you want to find out how a city is classified, you want to try and speak to the city administrators. I wasn't really successful in that bit of things, but I'll talk about the challenges that I faced in that stead. And then I also had interviews with fashion designers in Lagos because I wanted to speak to the people that kind of influence, the fashions of Lagos as a city. Of course, I think I would kind of talk about like the navigating research from the perspective of my thesis. I think that one of the things that I found out is that, of course, fashion is an area that has still not been well researched in these climes. It's an emerging area that seems to be neglected. And anytime you mention fashion, people just think it's some trivial thing. However, it has like social economic perspectives that can be explored from a research point of view. And that was one of the things that I found out for my research. I would say for challenges, I already mentioned, I said, the major challenge I found was speaking to city administrators, government, public enterprise, and I still don't have a solution for that. But what I discovered during my research is that most of them seem to be a little reluctant speaking to you, and if they do want to speak to you, they want to review what you're going to write before, of course, it's approved and published. And it might mean that they would have to strike out some of the things or findings that you've found out in your study, or some of the perspectives you discovered in your study. So if there's any other person on this panel that has been involved with like government stakeholders, it'd be interesting to see how you navigate that, because I know and I think that it is important for their voices to be heard from a research perspective. In terms of data, just gathering data on certain areas, I know that there's a general myth that we don't tend to like tell our stories. And for me, I found out that Dex research, in terms of just finding out about the history of African fashion, was very difficult for me. From two perspectives. First of all, the university libraries, or having access to certain documents that should have been made available. So, like I said, I moved recently to Manchester from Nigeria, and I can see the difference between the materials and the research. The research, how do I say now? The research works that they have in their library, and how they are willing to support academics when it comes to research and looking for certain materials, journal articles that you don't have access to, because of course we know that one of the issues in academia is open source, publishing and things like that. But I found that there's a difference between that, and that you might find out that one book can change the direction of your research question. And if you never read that book, then the perspective that you're coming from when you're writing a paper or being able to reference a particular person is really difficult. So that was one of the challenges that I had, that I couldn't find enough African writers within the fashion space that had written about what it was that I wanted to write about. Even though there were some works that had been written in the 1960s, I didn't have access to it when I was writing my study. So those are one of the challenges, and I'm hoping someone can also kind of speak about that. Please, can someone let me know how many more minutes I have so that I don't keep ranting? I think I have about 5 minutes.
Well, no, you don't have 5 minutes. You have 10 minutes.
Oh, 10 minutes. Fantastic. Yes. Okay. All right. So from that perspective, getting access to the documents was difficult. In terms of like survey in Nigeria, like implementing like the survey methodology in Nigeria, I think that it is one of the easiest methodologies that I encountered. I mean, from my undergrad days to master's to postgrad, survey seemed to be one of the easiest. But when I look at it from the industry perspective, I remember doing research as a marketing professional in like a fintech and in like an FMCG company, and versus getting feedback from consumers or getting feedback from respondents, it seems to be more easier to do that from an industry perspective because, of course, you have funding to either reach out to more people. For example, use an agency to get more people to respond to your research or even get people to do in-depth interviews. Another thing that I've noticed that is a difference between like industry and academia is the fact that when you think about it for industry, because they need more people to respond. So for example, if you're thinking about like research from like from the PwC perspective or from like a McKinsey perspective, usually those researches are supported by incentives for the consumers that they're speaking to. And I remember doing a couple of like Twitter surveys and getting over thousands of responses from the people because we had said if you do this, you have like a discount for your next purchase and things like that. But for academia, there are ethics towards, trying to prompt people to get feedback from your research. However, since I moved here, I've noticed that some people actually still kind of give incentives, but it has to be approved by the ethics board where you have to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the discounts that you're giving to your respondents would not influence their responses in the survey. Of course, it's usually difficult to prove that, but I found out that that's another interesting way to kind of approach surveys. For the content analysis methodology that I used, I think that it was quite time intensive. I was the only one that actually really, how do I say it now? I was the only one that was involved in like gathering or doing the content analysis for my work, and I had to do social media analysis. I had to do website analysis of all the Lagos city platforms because my study was trying to find out how the city represented themselves as a creative city. So how do they talk about themselves on their website? How do they talk about themselves on social media platforms? I think that it was a bit difficult because one of the areas that still seem to be evolving is analysis of like social media platforms. If you're going to be analyzing certain social media platforms, website for example, if the website has over 300 pages, how would you analyze that? Because I mean pages, when I mean pages as per in terms of links, if you click a link, the about us page can take you to about 50 other pages. So how do you make sure that you're analyzing it in a structured way that makes sense? Another thing that I also found out that for social media, for example, if you're trying to analyze Instagram content from 5 years ago, you would have to dedicate at least 2 to 3 hours to keep scrolling down on the Instagram page because the way Instagram is, you can't go to a particular year, a particular date to analyze data. So that was a bit difficult, and I've kind of Googled to find out if there's another innovative way to kind of do this. So it will be interesting. I always see panels and forums like this as an opportunity for someone to come up with an idea or maybe come up with a software that can actually help researchers or academics resolve such issues. So that was another challenge that I found out that Instagram, if you're going to be doing an Instagram analysis of images or comments and likes, it's almost, there is some sort of bias that could come in because you're analyzing people's comments. You don't know what the comments mean when they said it. If someone says love this and they have like an emoticon that is in contrast to what love this means, then how do you analyze that? So those are some of the challenges that I also faced. In terms of like in-depth interviews from the fashion industry stakeholders that I interviewed, another thing is finding the respondents that you want to speak to was difficult. I think it will be noteworthy to state that I did my thesis collection period was actually during the COVID pandemic, so it was really difficult reaching out to fashion designers in Lagos. But I think there's a quote that says that you are like maybe 100 people away from the person that you're trying to reach out to. So if you know 20 people, then those 20 people know other 20 people. And I think that was how I was able to resolve getting in-depth interviewees for my in-depth interview section. One thing I noticed though is in terms of like money issues, interview participants are not willing to speak about the income that comes into their business, especially when their names are involved or their businesses are involved. And if they do not mention the economic returns of their business, then it is difficult for us to actually gather data as researchers to be able to say that the fashion industry in Nigeria is worth this if the fashion designers are reluctant to say how much they're making. Of course, the reasons I found that they gave was because some of them, they're not paying tax because they're angry at the government. So if they tell me how much they're making and I do report it, and even if I do anonymize the results of my findings, they might get into trouble. So those are some of the issues that I also faced in terms of like getting economic data from these businesses that are quite important to the Nigerian economy. Excuse me. Excuse me. Okay. Excuse me. Sorry. I'm dealing with a cold. Okay. All right. Another thing that has also kind of stood out for me from like a retrospective point of view from my research after just speaking about my methodology is that one of the programs that I've noticed that they're doing currently in my university, because I'm classified as an early career researcher, is the question of impact. So when I was doing my research, I think I was more focused on like passion. Like I want to do this because I've always been interested in the fashion industry and how I think that creative industries are contributing to the Nigerian economy. But what I'm finding out as I grow in my research career in terms of like research is that if you want to do research, one of the first questions that you should ask yourself is what is the impact of your research to the society, to the community, to whoever it is that this research is going to impact. So if I was going to do this research again, one of the questions I will ask, excuse me, please, is
1 minute for okay. 1 minute.
One more minute. Okay, yes, 1 more minute. One of the questions I would, or one of the things I would say to my younger researcher self is how would this research impact the community? And when I say impact, in terms of like action. So if you've done this research, would this result into the development of a framework that would help the fashion designers community, or will it help Lagos City create a better community for creative designers or creative workers in Lagos City? So I think that's what I would like to end on in terms of like just research in Nigeria. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Moralaka. Although I would have come probably start from, please let's give a round of applause.
Thank you.
I will just start off by taking up on the last statement, but it's okay. I will just go straight to Dr. Prishara Oluwatoyin. You have the floor for 15 minutes, please. Doctor, yes.
Okay. So thank you. Can you hear me? Okay.
Loud and clear.
So thank you for having me. I will just speak. Okay. Oh, okay. I will speak briefly about how I conduct my research in Nigeria. I am an anthropologist, like I've already said, and my research is focuses on contextualizing the social and the cultural pathways in disease transmission and barriers of care. And basically, what I do is that I provide insight into cultural and social dynamics of health, illness, and diseases. I've in what I classify as a highly mobile group and in chaotic and chaotic but organized settings. So most of my research I've conducted since 2009. Let me put it that way. I've done it with group of people, non-Western, group of people that are, in a way, to some may be chaotic, but they are also organized. So I've worked with informal settings, public settings, work with market women, market men. When I mean market, I mean informal market settings in Nigeria. And most time, what I look at into is how people negotiate and renegotiate boundaries of inequalities, the norms of and values of inequalities in health, in gender relations, in practices, and some other things like that. So mostly I look at my work mostly from phenomenological point of view, looking at how everyday realities of existence, of events, shapes, the construction, the interpretation of health and health-related issues. So my trainings were in anthropology, core anthropology. And when I finished my doctorate, that was in 2014, I actually had to move into public health. So I started anthropology of public health fully. And my methodology has always been ethnography and qualitative methods. And I realized that moving into that space, you have to contend with a lot of issues. As a researcher, I had to learn new methods that are not traditional to anthropology. I had to learn new sampling methods that are not traditional to anthropology, and I had to go do trainings, online trainings, physical trainings, just to be able to apply my anthropological knowledge properly. And basically, in terms of methodology, when you go across disciplines, yes, anthropology is the domain of social sciences, but I realized that our method, the method we use in anthropology, is a little bit different, even when such methods are used in other disciplines. And I had to contend with that. Then another issue is that bringing anthropology into human and participatory approach when it comes to human-centered studies, which I had to also start creating. Remember, I said that my work is sometimes with chaotic but yet organized group. Then conducting field work in order to, to make what sometimes we refer to as familiar, defamiliarizing the familiar and making strange familiar, especially when it comes to public health issues. When you work with people who are more knowledgeable in clinical matters, and you are bringing your anthropological knowledge in order to solve issues, bring intervention, make it better, and contribute in a way. It's a collaborative research, and for your voice to be heard, you had to defamiliarize the familiar and make the strange familiar to other members of the group. And those were part of the things I could call my own challenges. Because, okay, let me set an example. Conducting in-depth interview, I had culture shock when I got to my current space, because people will just go to Spill and conduct interview. Do you eat? Are you eating? Why do you eat? You don't like the food? You like the food. And they just write and give you all the quotations. Then I was shocked. It is not, conducting in-depth interview is not you eat the food, you don't eat the food, and you put the quotation and you claim I have done qualitative. So I had to contend with that a lot, but I can tell you it's a lot better now. Then learning new sampling techniques that are not traditional to anthropology. Anthropology, you do more of ethnography, you do this, and that was also a big challenge for me. But now I think I'm better in it because I had to take courses online, do a lot of online courses. Some I paid for, some were free. Then another big challenge for me, if I look at it, is in the area of data, qualitative data and publishing. There's something we call open data sharing now, where many public health journals will request that you deposit your data in a repository. And that becomes a problem, ethical dilemma for me, because when you collect qualitative data, it is quite impossible to de-identify qualitative data, the identification of qualitative data, so that you can actually deposit in a repository for open data sharing policy, and for you to be able to publish in what we refer to as big journals. And I have to contend with between the issue of consent and no ethical issues in terms of consent, in terms of confidentiality, in terms of privacy of your respondents. And I had to contend with that, and I can tell you that I'm still working with that challenge. Okay, I can't hear you.
Hey, please, we can hear you loud and clear. We can hear you.
Okay, then I think that's one of the big challenges. Then before I get to that, in anthropology, when I was trained, is when you're going for your research, you do all those procedures and everything. But the issue of ethical approval, getting approval from a standard ethical board, became a little bit challenge for me. Even though we are better with that, but I know that many of us still fall into that pitfall, especially when we work on health-related issues, and you want to publish and your ethical approval is being asked for. Then you'll be like, I don't have ethical approval for this. Then it becomes difficult, even though a fantastic study, a good study, but it becomes difficult to publish it. So I think those are part of the challenges I have experienced for me. Then the last one is working with the government. Most of what I do here, for instance, during COVID-19, I work with some sub-COVID-19 Oyo State Committee and some other things. But, when you think this is what I have found on the field, and this should have a policy, implementation, and government policymakers are telling you something different, then you are hacked, you have your data, you have these, and you are caught in between the ethical dilemma and what they think they want you to do and they want you to publish. I think that's also a very big challenge that some of us are still battling with. So,
hello, ma'am.
Yes. Hello.
I'm like, can you please share experience? Just blend it with experience for us.
Okay.
You don't have to mention.
Yes,
don't mention names, but
yes,
please.
Okay. In public health, in anthropology of public health, one of the main things that you really want to achieve is in terms of policy. Policy, how what you find out can actually change the face of policy. For instance, we've been working on menstrual poverty, period poverty for a while. And one of the things we are pushing forward is to put making of self-made pad into school curriculum so that girls can learn to make it, because currently with the economic situation, there is menstrual poverty. But on getting to those that are supposed to embrace these, other things are, you come across other things that you don't want to bring to the fore, and it's difficult to, even though you have the data, you have the empirical data, this is human centered, this involved, in fact, you have gone participatory approach, bringing those guys, but your findings cannot really get into the policy, not because it is not good enough, but because of human and bureaucratic challenges. That is one of the things for me is a big challenge. Then another big challenge I would love to talk about is dealing with other colleagues that are not social scientists.
2 minutes, woman.
Because and because so many people seized a method as something everybody is familiar with. Like now, I can say I'm interviewing Professor Ademowa. I've interviewed him. I just write the interview. I put it together, and I've done qualitative. But when it comes to the real nitty gritty and it's difficult to push it through. And I think I need to stop like that. So thank you for having me on the platform. If there are questions, I think we can discuss further. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Please, a round of applause for her. Sometimes when anthropologists go to the field, a lot happens that they can't tell at home. I did my own master's and PhD at the motor park. And I remember having to be a conductor, a partial driver, and a ticket. I have to give them tickets. And I would join them to go and take over a park around 5:30, 6:30 a.m. So it was a wonderful experience for me that always at the point when I was presenting my master's pursuits, they were asking whether I'm still an Agbero or a researcher. Because even the language itself is totally different. Okay, so we move from the field and go to the archives. Then I'll go back to the field with Jana later. But now let's go to Seun Okwade, who is a pure historian, African economic historian. Seun, you have the floor for 15 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate the opportunity. Let me start by saying that the topic before me, is conducting research in Nigeria, reflecting on archives and field experience. Now, the first thing I would like to say is that talking about archives, there are three major national archives in Nigeria, and those archives are situated based on information that is information located within that region. For instance, Ibadan National Archives is a repository to government information records, and then historical documents that has to do with Western Nigeria. But basically, my work was not about working on maybe information that has to do with Oyo province or Ondo province or different provinces that are located in the archives. But what I used the information I used in the archives was daily newspapers, because my PhD topic was on juju music and consumer culture in the era of the oil boom in Nigeria, 1970 to 1980. So I look at that 10-year period in Nigerian history. So, and what was useful for me from where I will elicit information were papers, Nigerian dailies, Tribune, The Punch, and different ones. But I discovered that I had to select papers that addressed the subjects that I'm taking up in my research. And after looking at different papers, I discovered that four of those national dailies were most relevant to what I was doing, because what I was actually doing had to do with, in line with economic history, entertainment, conspicuous consumption, how wealthy people express conspicuous consumption within the period of oil boom, and how juju musicians use the template of their song to reflect that economy, to reflect the economy of the period and the social realities of the period, which I was working on. So I had to concentrate on four papers. that were most relevant to that area that I was trying to engage. And because of time, let me just go straight to those papers. I consulted Lagos Weekend, and then The Entertainer, and then Nigeria Tribune, and The Punch. And the reason why these four daily papers were most relevant was because they discuss, there are commentators that discuss the socio-economic activities of the period with respect to how influential celebrated personalities in Nigeria, how they express their wealth, how they, through parties, their business venture. So there are commentators who made series of writings on the newspapers that were able to, I was able to harness to get information for my, in writing my thesis. Now, the papers, I looked at the paper from 1970 to 1980, and it was painstakingly done on the basis of page by page search to be able to draw information. And that's very, very instructive. Anything that has to do with searching in the archives, whether you are working on your history or you are working on any aspect of history in the archives, it requires patience. It requires diligence. It requires the fact that one has to be painstaking about it. A lazy person cannot work in the archives. And the more you open those pages and you get information, the more you are building capacity for discipline, which is going to be useful for you later as you engage in your, future research. So I did a page-by-page search, and I was able to get relevant information. Of course, one thing about the archives is that there are archivists that you are working with, and they have to bring those papers for you. And one thing is you must maintain a cordial relationship, a cordial friendship with those people. It's part of the experience. I witnessed one experience where somebody was working for a foreigner. A foreigner hired that person to work in the archives and get information. And the person was trying to get the information by force and was fighting the people, the officials in the archives. They didn't bring the material for her on time, and that became issue. Such a person is already blocking his own chance or chances in accessing those materials. So we have to cultivate an attitude, a good attitude in confronting archives, so that we'll be able to get information that we have, because some people are working and bringing information. It is when those who bring information that you are able to go into an in-depth search to get the information that you need for your research. Now, let me also say that when I was in the heat of my research was the COVID. So I was going to talk about some challenges that I faced in the area of getting data for my fieldwork and all that. So for the fieldwork, for the fieldwork, I started my fieldwork during COVID, and it was really challenging because nobody wants to listen to you. You cannot even go out. But a time came when the COVID was subsiding. I had to come to Lagos because the area of my study was Lagos, Ibadan, and Oyo. So I came to Lagos and I wanted to interview one of the because I interviewed different people to make sure that I had an holistic approach, holistic coverage to what I'm writing, since that's to do with contemporary, social issues of the period. I interviewed industrialists, those I've listened to in music, I've read about them, who participated in the period, the wealthy class who spend money, the musicians elogize them, the musicians sang their biographical information, rendered a lot of information about them. Of course, I've done preliminary work and I've seen them. So I wanted to meet those people because I've actually listened and I've read about them. And the first person I was going to approach was the doyen of the man they described as doyen of industry, Prince Samuel Adedoyin. He was one of the people that spent lavishly during that period. And I was going to interview them so that my work would be original. But when I got a link to the Prince Adedoyin, I was thinking this connection that we used to have when you interview this person, you say, who can you link me with to also interview and before you snowball. So he told me, I got a link to him and I interviewed him extensively and he was really telling me some things that were very, very interesting that really helped my work. And I told him, I said, please, I desire that you link me up with Chief Okoya and the other Prince Adeni and the other person. So he vehemently refused that he was not going to link me up with anybody. He allowed me to interview him because of the caliber of person that introduced me to him. That he was not going to link, well, it wouldn't have granted me audience. So that made me to feel a kind of discouragement that how will I be able to get these people? So because of that, I had to, research, going to Fieldwork has to do with improvisation, creativity, innovation. So I decided that how am I going to get other people? So I wanted to interview industrialists, those people. I wanted to interview academicians, professors. I wanted to interview civil servants, and I wanted to interview people on the streets, like artisans. Those are the 4 categories of people that I intended to interview, and of course, I interviewed them. So when I had some kind of roadblock in that area, I started making contacts to different people, professors in the US, professors around, and one of the professors gave me a link to Iwo to interview another Alhaji in that category. That was why I was able to link up and I got the information I should get. Now, let me go to the area of the song, because the song were used as data. In historical research, songs are seen as ancillary source, but they are very potent source in historical writing. So I started engaging the song within the 10-year period. And I searched for all the songs that said something about the period and about those wealthy Nigerians who really expressed well during the period, who benefited greatly from the proceeds of the oil boom. And I also discovered that it was the general impression is that everyone in Nigeria, all the citizens benefited equally during the oil boom with the oil boom proceeds, but it wasn't true. Some benefited more than the other. So I started searching information in that music. Now, because the COVID affected me, I saw some names, some important names in the music, and I started searching, going into a biographical exploration of those names. So now, when I finished that, I was able to get information that I couldn't get through face-to-face interaction with those people. Now, let me say that of course, we use historical approach in our writing, historical analysis and historical approach in our writing. But those songs, I looked at the information from the historical perspective, lyrical and textual analysis of those songs. That's the method. It wasn't musicology. I was not doing musicology. Some people, when I was defending, they were asking me a lot of questions. I was not doing musicology. I was doing historical work. And I converted those transcribed material. I transcribed it and I used lyrical and textual approach to factor them into my thesis. And that's how I was able to use my experience, short experience from Fieldwork, archives, and the song that I used. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. A round of applause for that. 2 years ago, a friend of mine was conducting research on prostitution, and he had to interview the commercial sex workers. Few minutes after he entered their area, the police came to come and arrest. So he said, well, the father is dead now. I don't want to mention the person's name. The father just died recently. And probably is one of the organizers of this, the key organizer of this event. I mentioned nobody's name. Please don't put me on record. So how do we call the mother who is Latte, our Papa de Paco to come and bail him out? They will say, where were you arrested? So how do we explain what you are doing? So basically, we have different experiences from the field. But before I share anything on that, I would like to go to Gina. Thanks for your time. I know you've been waiting to give us what you have. So you have the floor for 15 minutes, Gina. Thank you, Jana.
Thank you so much, and thanks a lot for the invitation. It brings a lot of good memories to see this room. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to join the conference in person since COVID, but yeah, I'm really happy to be able to address you all today. So I'm going to also speak mostly about my doctoral research. So I started a master's degree on research master's degree in anthropology on the Nigerian music industry in 2017, and then started my PhD in 2018. So the topic for that was really the the so-called Africa to the world movement in the Nigerian music industry. And I'm going to speak mainly about that field, the music industry, because of course it's what I know, but also because I know it's a very popular topic at this conference. And the years when I attended, I was lucky to be able to attend several panels on the music industry. And I will also be presenting again on Thursday on some later research I did on that. But yeah, as you probably know, there's a lot of research that's coming out from Nigeria on the music industry. Before it was more Nollywood. Now the music industry is finally catching up in terms of research, I mean. And I've been able to observe a lot of dynamics. So I want to also talk about that, not just my own work, because of course, for me, I was coming from a UK university at the time. You know, it's a bit of a specific dynamic, but I was also able to see what Nigerian students in Nigerian universities go through. And although I hope things are better today, I want to, also convey some of these challenges. So I was very lucky to be in the position of doing 1 full year of fieldwork, ethnographic fieldwork, where I was fully embedded in the Nigerian music industry in Lagos, but I also followed people to Jos, Ibadan, abroad, Dubai, Paris, etc. So one thing that became clear right away is that this methodology, and I'm very, very glad to be surrounded by anthropologists today, because it's not a discipline that is so common in Nigeria. And even though it's the discipline itself might be limited everywhere in the world, I think the ethnographic method is becoming increasingly popular. Now I'm actually in a media studies department, and I continue to use ethnography as my main method. And so I think a lot of people can be interested in this method and maybe want to use it more in Nigeria. There's a lot that can be done. And so initially I was also a visiting researcher with the University of Lagos. And it was quickly apparent that they were not very familiar with the method. They had prepared a desk for me in office, and they thought I would come like every week, if not every day, which is not what I had planned to do and what was not what I had funding for. You know, I was doing participant observation, and so that meant being in some relation with promoters, marketers, musicians, the public, every day as much as I could, because even though 1 year is, you know, it's a privilege to have that much time, you still need to make the most of it. And I soon became aware that it's a problem for a lot of Nigerian students that, first of all, research on the music industry. So at the time, again, we're talking mostly like 2019. And I know, especially at the University of Lagos, things are moving really in the right direction. So it might be much better now. But also at the University of Ibadan, I've met a lot of people who face similar struggles, that doing research on the music industry, on the current popular music industry, was not necessarily taken very seriously and seen as a way to start an academic career, which is quite ironic when you think that now Afrobeat studies is literally a field of study in Europe and America. And you would expect that, you know, Nigerians in Nigeria would occupy that niche and would have been pioneers for that kind of research. And a lot of students wanted to do that, but they didn't feel supported by their institution, by professors around them. Many happened to be in English literature departments because there was just no other department where to conduct that research. And yeah, their research plans were not accepted or they were not taken seriously. Even for me, as I arrived in Nigeria, I was asked why I was not doing work on Fela Kuti. And again, this was 2019. There had been like hundreds of studies done on Fela Kuti. And that was even said by some professors who didn't know who Burna Boy is in 2019. So I really want to emphasize that, you know, students sometimes have very, very good idea. I've seen that repeatedly in Nigeria because they are close to the ground. They know the social dynamics that are happening, but then they face obstacles already at the institutional level. And a lot of, you know, some of the most impactful work done on Nigerian creative industries recently has been done by Nigerians outside of Nigeria. And I have to say that's a pity because, you know, it means needing much more funding to travel back and, you know, not having the same access. And so when I was invited for this talk, I thought, you know, this is the moment to really convey, again, all the frustrations that I've been, people have confided in me. And some of them I've also observed myself firsthand. People who I was working with had to drop out of their project, and I was able to finish my PhD, not them. So, you know, I thought it's really a good venue, a good forum to talk about this issue. And for the professors in the room also plead with them to trust their students and trust them that, you know, ethnography is a real method and being outside is real work. And I was very lucky because I lived with a Nigerian family which was very open-minded because, you know, increasingly as I was getting more and more embedded in my research environment, I was coming back every night past midnight. And so, you know, the whole estate knew that there was this single woman coming back every night after midnight, and they didn't care, you know, they didn't think about their reputation or anything. Like, they trusted me to be doing good work in the way that I wanted to do it. And I know, again, that for some students in Nigeria, saying that every night you're going to clubs, you're going to concerts, etc., might not be seen as serious work, while, of course, it is. And of course, it comes with logistical issues. Security is obviously one of them. I lived on the mainland. A lot of events were on the island, so coming back could sometimes be an issue. and of course, finances is the main issue for a lot of Nigerian students, just moving around and, being able to follow people like might seem like it's going to be a huge challenge. Actually, there are a lot of ways around it. Once you've managed to establish those first few relationships, because I found that people in the music industry were really interested in hosting students, and they were waiting for Nigerian students to actually come and want to study them. But somehow people didn't just come together, because either a lot of research that is done in Nigerian music industry is very morally grounded, sometimes in also religious ideals and other things, and so it's not so empirically grounded. And again, that goes back to the idea of fieldwork, and what I'm going to really say throughout this talk, that I really encourage professors to support their students in conducting fieldwork, even if it takes months, and even if it means just hanging out at concerts, at events, etc. Even at the University of Lagos, artists constantly come to do concerts, so it's very easy when leaving the premises of the university to observe things, to conduct proper ethnographic research. And so I think students should be encouraged to do that rather than, having their own argument and hypotheses based on just desk work and then confronting artists, because that's a lot of the research that is done in that order, developing some ideas about the music industry, which again are often informed by ideology or religious ideas, etc., and then confronting artists when they have a chance to interview them, rather than taking the time to really collect data, understand the sociological dynamics at play, the social norms that govern these artists, like why they write certain lyrics, the cultural values that are dominant, and why they embody those values for so many youths, etc. So yeah, I mean, I'm willing to answer any question that people have, but I think these are really the points that I wanted to see discussed today from my perspective, because these are, I think, some of the main challenges that people in the room or the people you work with, etc., might be faced with in conducting research in Nigeria, at least on popular culture. And I want to add that most of the points that Morolake mentioned fully resonate with my research, because I also worked on the creative industries. So a lot of similar challenges and similar experiences as well. Thank you.
You still have like 3 minutes more. Can I quickly ask you some questions? Can you share your linguistic or cultural experience, being your background and then coming to research in Nigeria? You want to share that as part of your presentation, please, quickly. Thank you.
Right. Yes. So thank you. That's a good question. I was also a bit apprehensive of that. Then it turns out that really in the music industry, the dominant language is English and Pidgin. So it was never really an issue. And I lived with an Igbo family, but then I would say the majority of people in the current industry in Lagos are Yoruba. So there's really not an indigenous language that's dominating. With just Pidgin, that's how business is conducted. That's how everyday activities are conducted. And oftentimes even in standard English, especially because I was also focusing on, I mean, I worked with the whole, I straddled the whole social structure of the industry and its value chain. So also a lot of aspiring artists, etc. But I would say people today, even if they're just an aspiring artist in Mushin or Bariga, they still aspire to be part of that Africa to the world movement. And so they're in a very internationalized mindset, and it's a very post-tribal mindset as well. So yeah, English and Pidgin were really the dominant languages.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. A round of applause for Jana, please. Thank you, Jana. We appreciate the discussants. I won't add any of my experiences again. I won't. There's no need to, because the book is a book I've been writing for the past 8 years. Tentative title is Sex, Power, and the Public, an ethnography of Red Light District. So the caveat I'm going to put at the end when it's published is, don't ask me questions about my participant observation. I'm going to put it there. at the front page because I know that people ask me a lot of questions. Okay, that means we all have different challenges. We have some experiences to share. We are going to leave the discussant and then we go to our panelists on this other side. So questions, comments, please. Oh, good. I love this. Early, Oga. It's okay. Our agenda people there. So I'm going to give like this time. Yes, please. Oh, yes, yes. We'll take the question on the screen when I hope you have noted the question on the screen. You can read it. Okay, so when it's ready, when we are ready to coming back to your side, then we take the questions and we'll reply. I mean, so what I'm going to do, unlike these organizers, my organizers that are not gender balanced, that are on the other side. If it were to be male versus female, maybe some people have said, 5, 3, maybe 3 male, 1 male. Gender people. They didn't complain now. Dr. Oga, now I'm complaining on behalf of the Association of Male Researchers. So this time I will take 2. Thank you for the exception. We love the exception. We are raising our voice too. No, the code this year is not agree for anybody. We don't agree. So take two from 2 females and 2. Then we take another round. Okay. Okay. So 1, 2. This line. Wow. Okay. Quickly. Okay. We just take as much as we can take. Just quickly. 2 minutes. Okay.
All right. So my question is all right. My name is Bankole Wright, and my question is to Dr. Mofeishara Oluwatoyin Omobowale, who is an anthropologist. So I'm also a sociocultural anthropologist, and I'm curious to understand because I'm working on street life. So when you mentioned the chaotic, can you please shed more light on what you mean by the chaotic, and how did you navigate these chaotic spaces as an anthropologist? Thank you.
Thank you. We go to the other side. How do we do it? Yes. Let's go to the female. I want a female now. Let's quickly. I want to wait my money.
Hello, good. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Ifwa Daze. I'm Ghanaian. I'm in Nigeria doing my field research, and this is a very interesting panel. I had a question for Morolake and Professor Omobowale. So my first question is about the interviews of residents. How did you select your sample? Because I'm also conducting interviews, and this is one of the things I'm looking at. You might have an idea of your sample, but how do you actually reach out to them? Because you talked about the residents of Lagos. And also, one thing that I have come across is people asking for, they don't ask for money, but they ask for a gift, which is money. So, and I have a research budget, but the research budget does not include payment for people. And so any gift means it's something that it's coming like personally from me. And so how do you ethically do that? And how do you explain to a Western institution that you are paying people, but it's not payment, but it's gift? Okay, so my question for Professor Omobowale is about participant consent. So my research deals with Anglican missions coming to Nigeria, and I'm a museum anthropologist, so I deal very much with the placement of objects in museums. Now I'm doing interviews in Abeokuta, and I interview people that may not necessarily read English or may not want to look at paperwork. And so my question is, how do I sort of think contextually about providing people information and also recording their consent in a way that is sort of complete? So yeah, these are some of the things I've been thinking about.
Okay,
Yes.
All right. 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much to all the participants. Well, I just have some concerns that I would like to be addressed. Now, while on the field, especially when you need very important information from the participants, sometimes quite a number of them are reluctant to talk. And you know that their talking is germane to what you're doing on the field. So how do you get them to talk? Now, some in my experience during my research in some motor parks in Lagos, there's some people that will tell me, I can answer your question, but I'm hungry, or I'm not in the mood. And you know that their position at that space is very important to what you're doing. How do you make them to talk in such a situation? And then there are some spaces where you may need an RA. How do you get the RA? And how can you ascertain, how can you be sure that the RA, that is the research assistant, can take you through the terrain in ways beyond what you have imagined, or in ways that suit your research interests at the end of the day? And one other question is how to navigate the chaotic space or difficult terrain. Like I worked with Agberos in Lagos, and I worked on street harassment. And as a female myself, I knew that there was every possibility for me being a victim. And well, it was almost traumatic for me, but I was able to finally overcome my fear and the challenges I had. But for upcoming researchers, well, my own method might not be the best, but for upcoming,
You share the experience. Also, might start from there. It's always good.
okay, from my experience, like as a female, I don't like people talking about my body. But because I was working on street harassment, and street harassment is what men do to women's bodies, I had to put myself in the shoe. And like I said, it was a little bit traumatic for me because they had to make reference to my body several times, and I wasn't. So I felt that there was probably another way I could have addressed the issues. I don't know if anybody here or any of the panelists can share their experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's go to Dominic.
And wait, finally, what comes the outcome of, yes, please, the outcome of ethnographic research is a large data set. How do you sieve out the important information from, yeah, as you go along? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I'll go to Mr. Dominic, then I'll go to the back. And I'll come to this side. Sorry, I mean, anyone will stop. Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Yes, my name is Dominic, and I'm coming from a geography background. You did physical, you know, in geography you have physical, you have human. So I did more of physical, but I'm now trying to transit to human. And in human, you use more of a qualitative analysis, while physical use a quantitative. But in approaching people for interview, or especially if you want to do participant observation, then I used to do that without letting them know my intentions. So I want to know whether that is all right in research. Then another one, there's something I come up with. I call it a random discussion. I call it just like a focus group discussion, but in my own case, I put it as random group discussion, where you meet people that have the knowledge of what you are looking at, but it was not organized. You didn't inform them before. You just met them and you get into discussion, and you're now beginning to throw in your question and you begin to get answers from them without them knowing what you have in mind. Is it also acceptable in research?
Thank you so much, sir. That young man at the back. Yes. The young man at the back of the yes. Okay. I don't need to I
Good afternoon. My name is Nnedozie Mwaiwu. So my personal problem, being a young researcher, is as with the issue of experiencing Hawthorne's effect in the field. So currently I've been researching around the issues of climate change education and environmental education, and towards particularly to teenagers in secondary schools and primary schools. So with the aim that this line of subjects are introduced into the secondary school. So the recent research we have been or have been conducting around the perception, understanding, and of these teachers about climate change and climate change education have come to see that without them knowing, when I was kind of observing the curriculum and what they are doing, I found out that these teachers most of the times do not basically know what climate change is. And since you cannot approach them immediately and administer the maybe questionnaire immediately, you have to inform them that you're becoming like maybe a week. And they will have to go home, maybe understand what you're doing. When you administer these questionnaires to them, converse to what you have observed without them knowing, you see a situation whereby they give you a kind of totally different result, that they so much understand climate change, that they even teach climate change, which most at times, or climate change or environmental education, which most at times is not expressly mentioned in the curriculum. So how do you basically address these issues in your research? Then secondly, I've tried as much as possible to interview, okay, final, yeah. I've tried as much as possible to interview government workers. But I found out that most of the times when you want to approach them, being a young person, sometimes they will use this word, what actually, a child. They won't want to give you an audience. A child, a kid. So they won't want to give you an audience. They will make the claim that you do not have understanding of what you want to research. They will make the claim that you are not even qualified to make that research. But I thought that knowledge is not restricted to by age. So how do we how do we interview these? Yes, how do we translate that traditional bias? Thank you. Let me do it like that.
I'll take that laptop from the side and then show to our okay, we'll take one.
My name is Rashid Adebayo. Yeah, my question is going to follow what Mr. Sheung Kwade said, and then using what you gave an example to portray it. Now, coming from using an NGO as an example, when you are doing a research in a volatile area, there's some kind of measure they give you that can actually safeguard you to some extent. Now, for example, in journalism, when there is a war, there's a particular law that prevents you as a journalist for you not to be tampered with, no matter where you go, to some extent. Now, as a scholar, what are the measures provided or the tools you can use that even if you go to a volatile area that can prevent you or safeguard you to some extent? Now, you mentioned something. Somebody went to a prostitute area and he was arrested. Okay, whatever. Okay. Using that language. So now, eventually, if he was being arrested, what can at least safeguard him? That's one. Now, some time ago, we did something in the Mission area here. Now, we were meeting a particular group of people that we wanted to do. So they are granted us audience, do virtually everything. But did they learn we went to the field work. There was a clashes. Now, apparently, there was problem between the land among two families. The other families thought maybe we are surveyor or whatever that came to the land. So they don't know what, but because of what we brought to the land and other people that followed us, we were being safeguarded because they were like, okay, these are the people. I'm coming back to that one. So because we did it for an NGO and there was a particular thing that safeguarded us. So as a researcher, PhD student that are currently doing research in a volatile area, what are the tools that can safeguard them? That's my question. Just put it simply like that.
I will not share my own NGO with you, but I share my experience with you. We will not live in South. Okay, let's take this man as the last one and then say, wow. We have less than 10 minutes more. And this is very interesting. No one has used my power to ask them money. So I will take one here and take one from here. I don't have the chair. Okay, notice.
All right, thank you, sir. My name is Ogunle Alayemi Jacob from Lagos State University. My question goes directly to Seun Kwade. Now, if I need to ask, in your presentation, it's as if your visit to archives, especially Ibadan, was smooth sailing. I would have smooth sailing. Yes, I had expected you to mention some of the challenges, because if I had to be archive Ibadan, that I know, because I did my masters, University of Ibadan, I did my FE for almost 8 years. I know that archive very well. So, but let me put it at rest. What are the challenges? Exploitation, extortion, non-committed of well established. Say it, Seun Kwade, in plain language. Thank you.
Our contact are about 4 minutes to respond. Don't worry,
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mary Jane Oga from University of Ibadan. So my question is to yes, okay, Mr. Kwade. Okay, so how do you know, how do you analyze archival materials? Like, how do you know you're actually doing it the right way? I've actually carried out a research using archival documents, and to me, as long as I found answers to my research questions, I just consider that that is it. But I want to really know, like, is that really the right way, or how do you know how do you find these archival documents and begin to actually mine them to get the information that you want and express them correctly? Thank you.
Okay, sir. Okay. I don't know whether I'm permitted to share my experience. I don't. It's not. Okay, sir. So it's like okay, my name is Bumi Olale. I'm from University of Ibadan. So during my doctoral the research, so in the last chapter of my thesis has to do with prostitution and crime in that location that I did. And I found out that most of the times when I went out for those interviews, I got myself into trouble. There was a time that the king, the ideology of that place, wanted to call police to arrest me. Then at the time I found myself among armed robbers. They were asking me which hotel I lodge. So, you know, the challenge I had is that place is like, we had a lot of people that are wealthy, and I got to know, and they told me about 3 prominent armed robbers that, you know, they will rob and then they will stop robbing and they will now become businessmen. So I now mentioned one of them, and they said the 3 of them were the sons of the same parents. So when I mentioned it, I said, what of so person? They say, madam, you have to be very careful here. Don't let me mess up. I'm a man here. So, and then the other one was prostitution. When I did on prostitution, I noticed I have to dress like an old mama that is looking for a straying child. So it was in the evening I went. When I got there, you know, they told me that teenagers were in that particular hotel, that they only wear bra and pants. I said, can this be possible? So when I got there, I was doing like this. They said, Mama, what do you want? I said, so it's like, that was the strategy I used to get that kind of
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. My name is Ajibola Shekoni from Lagos State University. First of all, I want to congratulate the chair and all the discussants for this wonderful section. So my it's not actually a question, but I want to talk in line with what the scholar from UI, what she said. She was talking about the relevance of she was discussing about the relevance of the archives in relation to your research. Now, my own question is, in the use of referencing, let's take for instance, maybe the 6th edition or the new 7th edition. How do you do the referencing? Because this thing is very, very confusing.
Thank you so much. Okay, we appreciate you. I don't know if you can hear me or you can hear me. Okay, the last question was on referencing. So I want to answer a question on bureaucracy, but before I do that, I want to go back to our discussion. They have been waiting. I'm sure you have lots of the questions. Jana, you are right. You are laughing. Moralake. Okay, Ajitoyi, Alpha. So we take 4 minutes. 4 minutes. So whatever question you pick, just pick any. Make sure you address the question very well. The others, when we go to lunch, we go to battle up. So I start from. Let's start from Jana. Oh yeah, Jana.
Thank you very much,
Four.
and
4 minutes.
thank you. These are really, really good questions, very concrete, and a lot of them have resonated with me and my work, especially the question of consent. Not telling your research participants you are conducting research is not possible. That is the short answer. However, when it comes to anthropology as a discipline, there are some waivers. So it really depends what code of conduct you are following, because this will actually matter at the time of publication. And so the difficulty is that, you know, there can be a large span of time between when you conduct your research and when you eventually publish it. But so you may have a feeling that, you know, you're collecting all this great data and there's no problem. You just your research is going well. But at some point you may face obstacles, and that will be when you want to publish it. And you know, this is the end goal. So it's good to have that always in mind. And many journals now, when you deal with human participants, research participants, you actually have to provide the consent forms that you used or the recordings of the consent. In most cases, you can just certify that you have them and just wish that they never actually asked you to produce them. But if you already know that you didn't ask for consent, you're just setting yourself for failure in the future. So I would really recommend just being very aware of this. And even if you don't use a consent form, because there are so many problems with consent forms, depending on the environment, the kind of research you're doing, and many of the researchers here have mentioned work on criminals, on prostitution. So of course, you're not going to go there with your consent form, and that's understood. However, there is still a requirement, a professional ethics requirement, that you tell your informants that you are a researcher. So they do have a right to not participate.
Thank you so much, Jana. So I'll go to Seun Okunade before I go back to Moralake and Fejishara.
Thank you very much. Let me start from the last question. How do you reference archival sources, archival material? Well, there's a general, I can't prescribe that because, of course, when you reference archival material, you must put the name of the archives. For instance, in Ibadan, you write NAI, then you put comma, you put the title of that document, you put the file number, you put dates, and all that. But the arrangement differs from institution to institution. For instance, in UI, when you have the guideline, that book, that prospectus, all the referencing styles are there, including archives, including music, including every other aspect. So if you get that research prospectus of your institution, it should be there. Because if I tell you that this is how to do it, you may discover that that's not how it is being done in your own institution. So if you check it, you are going to see it there. Then the issue of how to analyze archival sources. Well, I said that in my discipline, it is historical interpretation and analysis. What you have gathered from the archives, you internalize them, you start working on it, you interpret them, and you analyze them into the work. That's the basic fundamental way of putting archival sources into your work. Then whether I have challenges at the archives, of course I have challenges at the archives. It's not every time that I go to the archives that they give me materials. I have to wait. Sometimes I wait. Sometimes the person that's going to, this is not to implicate anybody. It's just the person that is going to attend to me may be assigned other official. I have other official assignments, and I will not have access to that material that I'm looking for at that particular time. But with patience and persistence, you will still have to get it. Another challenge is money, because you cannot get, it's not that you get materials from the archives and they give you free. You have to pay like 100 naira per page. Even if you have to do a photocopy, you pay 100 naira per page. So 1,000 has gone, 10 pages. It requires money. So that's another challenge. The challenges are many. Then you talk about doing research in volatile areas. Of course, there are measures that you can take. That's why sometimes you, in your preliminary studies, you don't just go to an environment and start interviewing them. The first thing you do is to look for the authority in that land, to look for the king or the baale, and you explain to baale, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing. It's not implicating. I'm not going to use it regularly. I'm using it for for academic purpose, and that addresses your question. You cannot interview somebody without their consent, because if you bring that thing out, they may sue you when they discover that you have recorded their history and you have taken it in a direction that they don't want. They may sue you. So it has to do with seeing that person, maybe the king, that person can protect you. You may even assign somebody that will follow you around. And the benefit of that is that when you assign somebody to follow you, the people will speak, because the person that is following you is part of them. There's a theory that says, okay, when you go to an environment and you are speaking to those people, they will not talk. But if you strategically employ somebody that is part of that culture, then that person is now helping you to introduce, this is somebody, he came to our line, he want to help us, he want to do, you see the people talking. So, and if you do that, that may work for you. And if you see the authority, it may be a kind of protection. So,
Let's take one more.
okay. Then we talk about whatever, I mean, informant, you talk about, your question talk about
Harassment.
Harassment. You see, in research, we are not all we are not endowed the same way. If you are doing research, you have to focus, you have to be resilient and focus on what you are doing. When I was in secondary school, my classmates used to abuse me that my head is big. I don't know whether my head is still big anyway. And that usually affected me. That usually affected me. So I understand what you're saying, because that time I feel like, why do you make my head big like this? But if you are focused, your stature is your stature. Nobody can change it, and nobody can. So you concentrate and you do whatever you have to do. At the end, you will skate through. So
thank you. Thank you so much. A round of applause, please. I beg, I will clap, man. Thank you. Okay, so we go to Felicia. Dr. Toyi, you have the floor, 4 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm going to be as fast as I can. Dr. Baikole, right? I think you asked about chaotic situation, though yet it's organized. I work in markets, and I've worked in almost all big markets in southwestern Nigeria.
I remember that.
Okay. And you can, well, for instance, if you know Oshodi, before it was a Balogu market, getting to Bodija market, you know, it looks as if it is not structured. Yet you cannot do anything in those places without following the proper. They are organized, well organized. So I would say that I navigate it because number one, I do reconnaissance survey before I start the main work. It's very important. Then my gender and understanding of the prevailing cultural, structures in wherever I want to study has been a good tool for me. So it's not fixed or cast in stone. It depends on what you are doing and how you want to do it. But it's very important to do those three things. It has worked for me. Then I want to, yes, the lady from Ghana talks about how do you select your sampling. Most time when you are doing qualitative or ethnography, your sampling is non-probability. Of course, we know. But what I think may also help is mapping your research area and clustering it in order to be able to put it into proper sampling position. Then if you want to go in the probability way, then that may take you doing some other things. especially when you are doing community studies, there are sampling procedures that are mostly probabilistic in nature that you can use. Then I also want to talk about okay, the issue of consent. Informed consent is very important when you are doing your study. Whether you collect that consent verbally or it is written, you must have one of it. It's very important. Okay, it's very important. Okay, it's very important. It is very, very important. You must have informed consent. And when we talk about informed consent, it means if it takes you to translate that your informed consent, the content, into Yoruba, Hausa, Pidgin, Igbo, Efik, whatever, you have to do it. And if you are getting ethical approval for your studies, especially when you are working with health-related issues, they will ask for the sample of your informed consent translated into other language you intend to use to conduct the studies. Then, yes, I think this one, I think
the last
is
question.
very important.
That'll be the last one.
Yes, it's about the largeness of ethnographic data. Yes, ethnographic data, qualitative data can be overwhelming, but you can make use of qualitative data analysis softwares like Atlas TI, InVivo, Deduce, Ethnograph. Even if you cannot afford to buy some of their plans, there are trial versions that you can use within maybe 14 days, 1 month, to actually analyze your data. And if you're analyzing your data with ethnographic data, don't lose focus of your team. Yes, you have a lot of Jara into your data, but what are your main teams? And when you work with your main teams first, then you can work about other things later. But when you are not there, you don't really focus on your teams, your research objective, and you are picking all the data, then it becomes very confusing and misleading.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We go to Dr. Moralake. Moralake, you have the floor. 4 minutes.
All right. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon again. So the first question directed at me was the interview selection of samples. I'll just give an example of how I selected my samples. I didn't do in-depth interviews with the residents of Lagos. I did in-depth interviews with the fashion designers that have a business in Lagos. And the way I kind of selected them was based on the people that had exhibited at Lagos Fashion Week at least once. Because again, if I was looking at the city as from a branding perspective, it's those that had been visible. Of course, over time, I found out that I couldn't interview some of those designers. So I had to kind of change my sampling method to accommodate designers that had been in operation for at least 3 years. How did I reach out to them? Honestly, multiple methods, from email to visiting their stores and going to some stores and finding out that their location online was different from what they said it was on the website, reaching out to people's brothers and sisters and aunties and uncles, and then using Instagram as well to reach out to these people, as well as people that I think that maybe follow them or have a relationship with them. And if I did speak to them, I could reach out to them. You mentioned ethical gifts as well. In terms of like giving or paying, to be fair, I think the way that I've seen that done in the UK perspective is that it is okay to buy someone a coffee and a drink. And the truth is, and I'm going to answer your question in collaboration with someone else that mentioned the lady in pink. Sorry, I've forgotten your name. Just forgive me. You talked about creating like a relationship. Like, how do you get people to talk, for example? And the truth is, research is a process. We always sometimes look at respondents like, I want something from you. And then you just go to them and you want them to give you response immediately. However, what I've noticed is that you have to build like an interpersonal relationship sometimes with these people, and that means checking on them. So I remember one of the designers I wanted to interview, she called me. She was like, oh, she has an order that she needs to figure out, and it took me like a month for me to get to be able to speak to this person, or even more than that. But what I've discovered is that you have to treat them as human beings. If you can justify that you're treating this person as a human being, then you can justify that you're buying them a coffee or a drink to be able to speak to them, because they are supposed to they're supposed to be comfortable enough for you to relax. I've also noticed that if you have an interview from 30 minutes to 1 hour, the first 30 minutes are very important. Don't just go straight into your question and saying, hey, so this is my research, I want to find out about this. Sometimes you have to look at the person. What have you figured like in your first?
Thank you so
my
much. Thank you. Just like that.
All right.
I enjoyed it this time. Before you wanted to
okay.
it's okay. Don't worry. Like it.
All
okay,
right,
so I think we are just going to end here. Yes, please. Oh, we are using the that's veto. It's okay. I've granted you the veto. Okay, please don't go. Just hold on. I love the way you have used your veto. It's okay.
Chairman, thanks for giving me the audience. There is something I observed in the
pattern of your reply.
Yes, that is what we call someone from the paper background, what we call research assistant. I did not see all of just mentioning research assistant. That is what the research. You can't avoid them. So if you have research assistant, most of the time you may not be on the field. The research assistant that will put the field, do this information. And I was a research assistant for a PhD student from California University in my town. So most of the time, we will go to the field. If you get the information, you bring it back to me. I will transcribe. But in the local language, you don't understand the language. So research assistant, if you are doing research, it is important.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. I think we're going to end it now. Why? Because we need to continue this discussion. I want us to put everything on. Let us continue the discussion. If we bring everything here, we'll give everything here. So on behalf of the bureaucracy, yes. Bureaucracy, Dr. I don't want me to talk about bureaucracy. Sometimes when we talk about book, what you have on paper in classroom is different from what you have when you go to the field. So for me, I would say that there are procedures to get approval when you want to get some things. I work with the military. I did something on military anthropology. And everything military, you go and get, but I take all my data. And I don't have to get approval to declassify. So it's very important. Like, let me follow the pattern of I think more like, don't treat your respondents as objects. You just go there, give me. Like ATM machine, you put card, give me. No. Get them acquainted, with them so that you can get, well, I'm an anthropologist, so I know what I'm talking about. We don't go to the field and get it. We stay with them, we relax with them, we chill with them. That is why I said, that my book, nobody should ask me. When I read like this, if you ask me questions, there will be problem. Like, for instance, let me tell you, I did research on motor park in Nigeria and Trotro in Ghana for postdoctoral. Trotro and motor park here in Ghana, almost very close. The same experience, but something different, which is what I got paid to do. So I tell you now, the thing we don't spend the money. So on that note, I want to end. Thanks for your time. We appreciate. The discussion. Thank you for your time. We appreciate. Thank you so much. See you in the next session.
Thank you. Thank you,
so
everyone.
much.